Okay. All right, JT, it looks like we can start now.
All right, so I'll take it from the top in case anybody joined in. We're about 10 minutes late, too. So anyways, today we're going to be discussing computer viruses, how they got their name, what they are, how they spread, and how to prevent them. Basically, they're very similar to biological viruses. They pass from one living thing to another, in this case a computer. So it's easily spreadable, and it's not necessarily living, but it's still can reproduce by themselves. How they got their name, it's more or less piggybacks on top of a program or document. It reproduces same way in the sense a biological virus injects itself into a cell. So once it's running, it's able to infect other programs or documents. Let's see here. What they are. A computer virus is a small piece of software or code that piggybacks on real programs like Excel, anything that has embedded executable languages, so Visual Basics. There's a number of them, but without getting too technical, basically it's a single piece of software code that can spread from one to another. All right. You guys can see my screen too, right, Gene and Dean and Brian? Okay. A big common one lately has been email viruses. Most of the time they're sent as spam. I think Kurt and several others have sent out examples of them. We've had a few asking to reset passwords. So sometimes they're viruses, sometimes it's just a spam attack. It usually replicates itself by automatically mailing itself to dozens of people, and it attaches itself to your contact or address book. Most emails are sent in plain ASCII text, which can't necessarily run programs, but they can carry the virus because they have a macro language. One way to clean them and get rid of them is through doc files, is to save them as rich text format, so save them in RTF format. So if you ever have a suspicious email that has a Word doc attached or it's been passed through multiple people, one way of making sure you can kind of clean it out is just saving it as an RTF file.
JT,
Sure.
Would you explain to the people watching a little bit what is an RTF file and how you can get to one to save it as that?
Sure. Usually you can save it in whether you're using Word or even just, I think OpenOffice even has an option for it. So regardless of what platform you're using, usually when you go to File and Save As, you can save it to a rich text file, which basically gets rid of the macro language that Word and Excel files carry, which is what the virus attaches to. So it kind of simplifies it. And then we have another big one, which is Trojan Horse. It's a computer program. It usually claims to be a ghost program, which simply means it does nothing. It kind of sits in the background. But it actually does do a lot, and when you run it, it does quite a bit of damage. It can take out your hard disk, and they really don't have a way to replicate automatically. It's usually attached through a file directly. A big common place for those is peer-to-peer networks and torrenting. Like a lot of the students we see come in with different peer-to-peer programs like uTorrent. LimeWire was a big one, but they've slowly gone away. BearShare. So all those programs are pretty common with Trojan infections, and you come across that quite a bit, especially at the help desk. So the biggest way to avoid them, I would say, is try to avoid peer-to-peer networking, because you really don't know what files are being directly sent in with that file. Worms. They're a small piece of software that uses computer networks and security holes to replicate themselves. A copy of the worm usually scans the network for another machine that has a similar security hole from the first one, and then it will copy itself to that machine and just kind of piggybacks on down the road. It'll just keep going and going and going. So it's sort of a domino effect. So kind of to touch up on the worms and Trojans here, they're probably the more common viruses that we see nowadays. Just with the climb in peer-to-peer networking that we've seen, a lot of students have started using peer-to-peer networks with uTorrent and free movies, free music, and all that, and it's kind of really increased Trojans and worms lately. So That seems to have been a lot of what I and Matt and Dustin have seen, and Scott, with the Trojans and worms through peer-to-peer networks. And then you also have different ways they can spread. Through Google Images has been a really big culprit lately. Most people haven't really recognized that, but just because the nature of the source, there's so many different sources and websites when you do a Google image. It's not traced to one specific person or one specific site. It just pulls kind of a group effort from different sites you have. You know, you can Google an animal or whatever it may be, and it comes back with just various sites that some are not trusted, some are, and you just really don't know. And unfortunately, you click on that image without realizing that. So Google Images has been a big culprit. Thumb drives transfer viruses quite easily as well. Anything that's zipped and delivered as an exe file, which means it'll run as an executable file, you kind of want to avoid those unless you're sure it's a trusted file. So virus attacks, basically there's some sort of trigger that'll activate the attack phase, and the virus will do something, which could be a number of things. It's anything from printing a silly message on the screen to erasing all of your data. The trigger may be a specific date or the number of times the virus has been replicated. It's hard to really pinpoint exactly what can cause the attack. It's just more or less avoiding the sources of the attack, what you can do to avoid it, which kind of brings us to how to prevent them. The common ways is you can download Microsoft Security Essentials. Mac has a couple of them too. They have Sophos and they also have AV-Clam. Really, there's a lot of different virus protection software out there, but the Microsoft Security Essentials, Sophos for Mac, and AV-Clam, they're all freeware, and they're kind of what we recommend. But if you want to go out with the paid versions, you can do that too. Just try to research it before you do commit to it. Usually you want to buy it from a retailer if you can. Avoid anything that comes up on your screen and says, buy here to fix this. It's usually a virus itself. Avoid programs from unknown sources. That goes back to using uTorrent and anything you download music, movies with. If it sounds too good to be true, usually it's too good to be true. Just avoid it to be on the safe side. If you do it, make sure you do have an antivirus program that can at least prevent some of it. Because if that's the worst thing you can do is start using untrusted programs and using peer-to-peer networks, because you're just opening the door, so to speak. So if you choose to do it, I strongly recommend against it. But if you do it, just make sure you're protected at least.
JT, I have a question.
Sure.
And maybe you're going to get to it, but
yeah.
In the past, we've always been told Macs are safe, and I think that's something that is no longer true. Would you mind expounding on that a little bit?
Yeah, it used to be, the best way to explain it is there used to be in the previous years where there was more PCs to Mac, and it still is that way, but slowly we're seeing that change. I mean, I think the number used to be 10 to 1, and now it's down to like 5 to 1. So Mac's really stepped into the market, and they're selling more devices, and for some would argue some of the prices are a little more reasonable than they used to be. But long story short, it didn't make sense for anyone writing a virus or a worm to program for one Mac when they can hit 10 PC users. Why attack an audience that's so small when you can attack a larger audience? Well, now that the audience is expanded, now it's starting to make sense. So we're starting to see more and more Mac viruses, like the flashback virus. I think it affected 500 million users on the Mac end. So it's not that they're invincible. It's just really it didn't gain much attention, and it is a different operating system. So it does take knowledge of both. As the virus end goes, the writer has to know knowledge of the OS on the Mac side and the OS of Windows XP or Vista or 7, whatever you're running. But still, it's something that they're starting to open up more and more lately, where you're going to start seeing it in the future. So it's a good idea to try to get an antivirus program and protect your Mac if you have it. And then I think, let's see here. There's a couple different resources we recommend. This is kind of for the PC side. If it's Mac, I would stick to the Sophos or the Clam AV. But for PC, you can do Microsoft Essentials and Avast AVG. These are all freeware antivirus programs. If you want to go into paid versions, I'd check it. Your local retailer. Norton has a few products out there. They tend to slow down the system a little bit, but you're more than welcome to go that route too. And then if you end up getting a virus, we have programs that you can access on thenite.com, and we'll post this PowerPoint slide too, so you can access it on our ITS site. But you can use programs like Malware or Adaware or Spybot, and they'll help remove and clean up most of that. And they're all freeware programs, so it's not something you have to pay for. It's just something that the Knight likes to offer, and we like to recommend as well. And then you can also, we have Symantec.com, which is an advisory site. They continually post new alerts and new messages on what to expect and what's coming out. ZDNet does similar. It tells you how to protect against computer viruses, what new viruses are out. They're all update sites. Another good one is wildlist.org. It's recommended by PC Magazine and MSNBC. They're pretty much the main source of information when it comes to viruses spreading. So I like to check in with them periodically, and I think they were one of the guys that approached the flashback virus. They were one of the first ones that caught on to it with the Java exploit. So they're real good at keeping on top of their stuff. And like I said, all this will be posted to the ITS site, so you're more than welcome to go through it. There's quite a bit of information. I always like to recommend just backing up your data of any downloaded software, because you really can't anticipate when you're going to have a virus or a worm. It's just something that you try to prevent the best you can. And in the event it happens, just make sure you have all your data backed up. That way you can recover whatever is lost. And then also, you want to run your antivirus software all the time. Make sure it's up to date. If it should be set to automatically. If it's not, you want to go in there and press the update button if the feature's there. If an email attachment comes in, if you're not sure what it is or who it came from, just don't open it. If you don't recognize the sender, definitely don't open it. And if you do, call them and try to find out if their account's been breached or if they've had any issues on their end. So those are just kind of the basics on it. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the YouTube chat or through Google Hangouts, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
JT, would you mind hitting on Postini?
Postini, that's right. Yeah, Postini is our automated spam blocker, and I actually have a slide in here I can bring up for us too. Postini it's basically, it acts as an auto spam blocker. It'll sort out a lot of the spam that we get in. Sometimes it'll target addresses as potential spam, even though it's not. So usually you should get an alert in your inbox saying this message has been blocked by Postini, and you'll have a login, and it's login.postini.com. If you haven't signed into it yet, you'll create an account through that link. You want to remember those credentials if you can, because it's worst case scenario they can reset it, but you usually want to log into it and check it periodically. I like to check mine every 2 weeks just to make sure if anybody sent anything that's been targeted as spam. But it's a built-in spam blocker. It's hosted through Google, so it kind of acts as an autopilot program. It's nothing that you have to maintain. You just want to kind of check it periodically to make sure that your messages that you need are coming through. So if you're not getting an email, first place to check would be Postini, and you can log in with the credentials that you create.
JT, as a screen share, could you show us logging into it?
Yeah, you got it. So the address itself is login.postini.com, and I'll go ahead and sign into mine here. And this is kind of the layout. It basically gives you, you can sort down through columns of last week or 3 days or all, and then you can go into potentially detected viruses, and then when it comes through, you have an option to deliver the message or to decline the message. If you push it through delivered, it'll populate in here, and you'll have it in this tab. Same thing with trash. If you decide to throw it away, you'll have it in trash. And then you also have an archive feature too, which you can customly search the criteria you're looking from. But it's really not all that complicated. It's all web-based, so you don't have to, download any clients or anything along those standards. You just pretty much log in. Like I said, I like to do mine periodically every couple weeks, just to make sure if anything's being blocked or if it's bad news, we get it taken care of.
Also, if you'd like further information about Postini, we do have some information about it under the ITS website, and it would be under security. So if you want to read up on Postini, you can. It's there for you. JT, could you talk a little bit more explaining the difference between how people should handle viruses on their home computer or what happens here at the university? I mean, here we've pretty well gotten everyone taken care of. We've got them covered. But at home, it's a little bit of a different story.
Sure. At home, if you have access, if you're able to, the first thing you kind of want to do if you think you have a virus is go to a source like nanite.com, which I'll pull that slide up. Nanite.com, it's completely open sourced, free program. They have programs they recommend, and they have also sites they recommend for information on viruses as well. But let me see if I can actually pull it up for you to give you an active view of what it looks like, because this is just a small screenshot. So when you load it up, it'll come up and you'll have different features. They have web browsers they recommend, they have messaging. As far as viruses is concerned, if you scroll down to security, the ones they recommend is Essentials, Avast, AVG. The ones we like to recommend out of the choices is Essentials for the antivirus program, and we run a combination of programs to try to clean it up. So Malware is a good one, and Spybot is also a good one. So if you think you have a virus, you can run these programs. They're automatic installation and they run automatically. You do want to be a little bit careful with your data. You probably want to back your data up first, because you can, unfortunately, without really knowing what virus is on the computer, whether it's a Trojan horse or a worm or whatever it may be, sometimes they don't always respond well to these automatic scans. So you want to make sure you at least back the data up. If it's too severe, I would always recommend, try talking to someone at the help desk first. We can kind of assess the situation as it is, because each one changes from case to case. But most cases, you can kind of clean it up yourself, and Nanite's a great source. Malware will clean up a lot of stuff. Super, this one down here, is also really good for cleaning out temporary files and tracking cookies, which is where a lot of slowness kind of occurs in your computer. Most people don't check places like that. So I would just kind of stick around Nanite.com, because they offer a lot of services. You can always go to Microsoft's website, and they're actually the ones that sponsor Essentials. So Microsoft is completely pushing Essentials for freeware to their users as well. But if you can't, if it really seems too complex of an issue, or if you're really having problems with it, I would just recommend, try to give us a call first. And we may be limited with what resources we can offer for home computers, but I myself and most of the help desk is pretty reasonable with giving advice on each particular situation on what to do and what should be done. But that's kind of the gist of it, is just to run the freeware programs. You don't have to pay any money for them, and it'll clean up the computer at least somewhat to the point to where you can get it in a working condition. But the key point is to always have an antivirus program installed and running. If you want to get a paid version, you can. In most cases, the Essentials, which is the feature on Nanite.com, or even AVG, it'll do the trick. But providing you're not, using peer-to-peer programs like uTorrent or any movie sites, that you're usually pretty good. But I hope I touched on it.
Thank you. One other thing is, you hear the words virus, malware, and phishing.
Sure.
Would you mind kind of going into the definitions? What a phishing attempt is, and the difference between malware and a virus?
Sure. Well, the viruses, kind of like we touched earlier, they can be a variety of things. You have Trojans, you have worms, you have backdoor attempts. So there's several different viruses. As far as phishing goes, it's kind of a whole separate issue. Often when you go to websites, it could really be any website, but it's either websites or email, and essentially they're pushing electronic information through a fake attempt. So I think we have an example of one that Kurt Law received. Let me see if I can pull that up. Yeah. So he received an email from Wells Fargo a while back, and basically they wanted him to follow this link to enter in his ATM credit card information. And from what you can see, it looks like a perfect, wellsfargo.com. It's got a couple things added to the end, but it looks like it's a wellsfargo.com website. It looks pretty legitimate from a lot of people's perspective, but being the wise man Kurt is, he obviously looked into it, and as you can see, that's the actual address that it's directing you to, which is not affiliated with Wells Fargo at all. It's crm.emarket. I think it was like an address in Taiwan or the Philippines, something like that. So that's pretty much a phishing attempt. They're trying to fish you away from the correct site you should be going to and redirect you towards their site so you can put in your information. It's kind of a bait and hook trick. So as soon as you take that bite, you're pretty much clicking a malicious link or in a malicious attachment, or they're just simply trying to get your credit card information. So this is a big element of identity fraud and bank theft and several others. So I kind of guess that fits in there too. If you ever get a message from your financial institution or whatever it may be, I would give them a call, because they really should never send you a link asking for security information or your credit card information, anything of that sort. And that's kind of the best way to play it, is give them a call and try to get more info on it. On the viruses, it's basically the biggest ones right now that we're seeing is a Trojan. And the way Trojans kind of work is they're a program that claims to they call it a ghost program, so it runs in the back or it does nothing, but it actually runs parallel with your operating system and does a lot of damage. It attacks the hard drive in many cases. So the most common place they're found is through peer-to-peer network programs such as LimeWire or BearShare or uTorrent. They kind of get transferred through direct files and can do some damage. And then the other big virus is a worm, which is a small piece of software that uses computer networks and security holes to replicate itself. So it goes from one network or machine to another through security holes. So those are the two biggest ones we're seeing right now, but that's kind of the difference between a virus and a phishing attack. Both malicious in content, but not necessarily identical.
Something I'd like to add is that if a virus or a suspected virus or phishing attempt should slip through the ATSU to ATSU emails, please let the help desk know. Our network team, we would forward it on to them, and they would try to track it and see if we can put a stop to them. So that's something we really appreciate you doing when and if something slips through. So, okay, JT, I'm sorry. That's all I had to say.
No, that's fine. I think despite the technical difficulties, I think we touched on the biggest subjects. And
yeah, hey JT, I've got one more.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about Macs. People used to think that they were somewhat invincible to
Sure.
viruses, and we're seeing them a little bit more. We've also heard through the years that the next phase for virus attacks will be on mobile devices.
Yeah.
We seeing anything there? Do you guys get reports of anything that are there?
So far, on basically the iPhones, they run the iOS operating system. They haven't seen a whole lot, so they've been kind of untouched. But on Android phones, they're starting to pop up. We haven't really came across it, but just the IT industry in general is slowly touched on it. The Android phones are a little bit more accessible, and you can, they call it rooting them, so you can open it up and customize it to your own preference, as opposed to the iPhones. You can't really do that except through jailbreaking, which is when you kind of break the code that Apple puts on there. So it basically, yeah, it's happening. It's just we're not seeing a lot of it yet, but I'm pretty sure in the next few years we're going to see quite a bit more, because we kind of...
Yeah, I've been hearing that for years, that we'll see it. And there are some cases, I think, for both Android and iOS, where there are reports of it, but it's not very widespread at this point. And I guess for the people that are watching, I think the advice there is, just like on your computer, be careful where you surf.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the apps, definitely. When it comes to Android, don't try to stay away from third-party apps. Try to use the Android Marketplace app if you're going to get apps on your Android. Just don't use third-party apps, because those are the ones that, if there is a virus attached to it or whatever it may be, it's usually a third-party app that triggers it, because it's not really censored by Android.
Well, one of the areas that I think we need to kind of increase our skills on is helping other people to evaluate whether a site is legitimate or not. And that goes not just for websites, but also for mobile apps. So typically, if it looks legitimate and you know of other people who are using an app, even if it is a third-party app, typically those will tend to be safe. You kind of have to use judgment at some level, really on any of the given platforms. But one of the things that we can do is to try and help offer that service, so that if you have questions and you're like, I'm not sure about this app, it sounds great, let us know. We'll take a look at it, and we do that probably more than most of you do. So we can use our kind of remote knowledge that we have just from surfing around, and we'll give you an opinion on it.
Yeah, I always welcome questions here at the help desk. So at any time, anybody can shoot us an email or drop by, and we'll be happy to try to take any questions you have on directly and get you an answer, or what we recommend at least.
Good topic, nicely presented.
Yeah,
do we have any other questions before we sign off from anyone? This will be on our YouTube channel, so we'll get that information out later. So if you have any people in your office that did want to attend and wasn't able to, the information will be available later. So thank you, everyone. And JT, thank you a lot.
No, thank you. So sorry, everybody, for the technical delays, and we got off a few minutes late. But if you do have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. So I'll be happy to answer anything.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks again.